But one thing that wasn't a surprise was how great Good Omens was as an adaptation. Guys, we're going
Yeah.
to dive into the critically acclaimed Amazon Prime TV show Good Omens, which is a show based off the 90s novel written by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. It was adapted, I believe, in 2016, and it was something that was a labor of love for Neil Gaiman because of the passing of his friend Terry Pratchett. And Owen and I are going to kind of like talk about our thoughts on season one and season two. Just kind of giving you guys a brief overview. So obviously there will be spoilers up ahead for Good Omens, but my first initial thoughts, of course, was that I loved the show because as a Doctor Who fan, I'll watch anything that David Tennant is in, and I had an understanding of who Neil Gaiman was just from Tumblr, and because
Yeah.
I he's very active on Tumblr, you
Yeah.
know. So when I saw the show and I recognized Michael Sheed, who was also in Twilight, I was like, oh, I know that guy. Okay, this will be fun, and it was. It was a fun show. It's an amazing show. As someone who's also like a huge fan of, I love anything adapted to Christian theology, like Lucifer, Supernatural, Good Omens.
Mm,
That's my shit right there. So I was
yeah.
genuinely a fan of the show. Owen, how did you start watching the show? And like, do you like it? Do you love it? Is it like okay to you?
So I start watching. I think I've also. This is where I confess I've never read like a single Neil Gaiman book,
Mm-hmm.
like ever. I've watched a lot of the adaptations of his stuff. So I've seen like Coraline and things like that, but I've never actually sat down and watched books. So I wasn't. I can't remember. God, it's to be a while ago now. I think it was just that it started getting popular on. I think it was on places like Tumblr and stuff like that. And I knew David Tennant, Michael Sheen, from sort of other stuff as well. Of course, Doctor Who. I know Michael. This is where I was at. Michael Sheen was also in Doctor Who. I think he was in he was the voice of one of the villains in like Series 6, but they really like messed up his voice. You remember
Oh.
the one where it's like Amy and Roy like trapped in the TARDIS and it's like the evil voice. Yeah, that's Michael Sheen like doing the
Oh.
voice.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
they like pitched his voice way down, but that's him. So yeah, no, as just like you, I love the show. I mean, that's why I stuck around for season two as well. But I'd in terms of like the adaptation of it and like how good of adaptation it is, I'm not really like sure about all that because I just came in, I think like just as a show fan. But as a show fan, yeah, I really liked it. I do like the Christian theology elements. I do like sort of playing around with the kind of conceptions of like heaven and hell and like
Mm-hmm.
the sort of very binary good and evil and Armageddon and things like that. I think that's something that recurs quite a lot in Neil Gaiman's works, from what I know of them.
Yeah. And I think that with season one, there are a lot of fans of the books that kind of came out, and they were talking about how much they liked the adaptation because when the book first came out, they had tried to adapt it, I believe, into a film, but
Yeah.
around the time that was going to be adapted into the film, 9/11 happened. So then they were like, oh, American audiences do not want something about an apocalypse. So that was
Oh.
pushed to the wayside.
Yeah.
Yeah, not not a very happy story. So then I believe that like Terry Pratchett really pushed for Neil Gaiman to make this adaptation because he wanted to see like what it would look like. He wanted to watch it.
Yeah.
And Neil Gaiman was someone who's like, I like adaptations, I'm okay with them, but I can't really trust it's gonna happen until I'm like sitting there watching it. And Terry Pratchett was
Mm.
someone who was like, I don't like adaptations. They don't work. They don't happen. I'm sorry. Like I have no faith in it at all. But he had passed away due to like Alzheimer's, and
Mm.
so Neil Gaiman felt like it was kind of like almost like a last wish for Terry Pratchett to see Good
Yeah.
Omens become this series, and thankfully it did. Through
Yeah.
Amazon Prime.
I
You know.
think they did. They did an audio series first, didn't they? They did like a radio play thing
Yeah.
on the BBC. I think I'm trying to remember because it was like two other famous people who did Crowley and Aziraphale.
Mm-hmm.
Can't remember who it was. I want to say that it was like two people who've also been in Doctor Who, which is just British actors. Like they're probably going to have been in Doctor Who at some point. But
Yeah.
I think it was two like fairly well known guys doing that Good Omens. I think that was like that was what I want to say that was like late 2000s, early 2010s
Mm-hmm.
that they did one for the BBC.
Yeah, I had heard that there was a radio show for it as well. And I think when the show was like first announced, I had seen like casting news about it on Tumblr. I'm gonna be referencing Tumblr a lot in this.
It's a very Tumblr adjacent show.
It's, it is a very Tumblr adjacent show, which is why I wanted to talk about it, because I think that this is a little off topic, but still on topic. I feel like a lot of shows that Tumblr latches onto, especially like I guess in like 2010, 2012 to like 2017, queer baiting was like a really big word because
Yeah.
that's what was happening. Like Supernatural, Doctor Who, Sherlock, Teen Wolf, that's
Mm.
another one. Merlin, that's another one. Like there are a lot of these shows that like have like these homoerotic subtext with the male characters who are just friends and not
Yeah.
actually interested in each other anyways. And then you
Yeah.
have like this revival of like queer content with like Good Omens, Our Flag Means Death, like so many
Yeah.
other shows that like What We Do in the Shadows is another one. Like
Yeah.
these shows that are like these characters are queer and they like guys and they could date each other. That is a very real possibility. I'm telling you right now, viewers, like it could happen. You're not just seeing things. I swear to God, So it's refreshing to have like Good Omens, which is a show with like two guys, Michael Sheen playing Aziraphale, David Tennant playing Crowley, as like an old married couple where like, yes,
Yeah.
they've been like in a relationship with one another. Is it romantic? Is it platonic? Who really cares? They love each other. They know that.
Yeah. It's interesting that I think wasn't Michael Sheen going to play Crowley originally.
Yeah.
I think when they did it, so I
I
think
think
it's interesting how how they sort of switched that.
he said that he related more to Aziraphale in like an interview, and I think that
Yeah.
based off his past castings, like the past characters he's played, it makes more sense that he would play Crowley.
Yeah, so I'm thinking of Twilight again.
Oh my gosh, I don't know why Twilight is the only movie I could think of. He's been in so many other films, but like,
What was it? He plays Tony Blair a lot. I know he's played Tony Blair like 4 times. He did it in that one where the Queen, where Helen Mirren was the Queen.
right?
Um, what else? I know he's done lots of other like Frost Nixon as well. I think it'd be the other big one.
Yeah, he's played the villain a lot of times in like his past career, and David
Yeah,
Tennant has, for the most part, played relatively good guys, I guess you could
yeah.
say.
There's Kilgrave and Jessica Jones is the one I'm thinking of. I think that was his previous like big villain role.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
it's mostly like it's definitely mostly sort of more kind of hero-y stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. The only other role I could think of for David Tennant is Alex Wheatley in Broadchurch,
Oh
which
yeah, yeah. There's when he played Casanova in that. So that was like right before Doctor Who. He played Casanova in like the Russell T Davies one.
yeah. I remember that as well.
Yeah,
Yes. But it's fun to have Good Omens as like this kind of like show that people can watch and enjoy. And if you say like, oh, the two leads are queer, no one's gonna look at you like you're like stupid. Like it's like, oh yeah, they
yeah,
most likely are. That's
yeah.
perfectly canon.
No, exactly. I think
Yeah.
it's interesting. I don't know if we're getting slightly ahead of ourselves, but like the shift from almost season one almost being like sort of almost being queerbait, and then season two like almost being like definitively not. It's almost like because the first series was 2019, wasn't it? And then the second
Mm-hmm.
series is like in the 2020. So it's almost kind of representing a shift in the
Mm-hmm.
way that that's presented from being sort of like there's a lot of those sorts of like Tumblr adjacent shows kind of skirting around being queer and queerness and into the sort of early 2020s being more like but outwardly definitively queer with stuff like you said, Our Flag Means Death, What We Do in the Shadows, shows like that.
Yeah. And I think with season one, I love this. I love season one so much just because, like, it is a straight adaptation from the book. So it's easy to kind of
Yeah,
like follow along with it. And I think that one thing I enjoyed the most is just like the story to be able to see, like, just Crowley and Aziraphale and how, like, they're kind of separated from their own homes. Like, I guess, like,
yeah,
their own from like heaven and hell, they're not really like huge representatives of them, because
yeah,
they've gotten so comfortable living on Earth, and they realize like they've made this huge oopsie because the kid that they were supposed to be watching is not actually the Antichrist. The kid's just like kind of mean, but the actual Antichrist is just like some normal kid that lives
yeah,
somewhere in London. And is like, oh yeah, this kid is the Antichrist. Like
yeah.
we've been watching the wrong kid the whole time.
Yeah, was it interesting how they immediately go in on the nature of sort of no one's like inherently evil. It's
Mm-hmm.
like this sort of this assumption that the Antichrist would just be born evil, but actually because of his sort of he's been raised by like a nice kind of well-adjusted family. He's actually chill, and it's tying into sort of Crowley kind of believing, oh well, he's a demon, so he's inherently evil, and actually he can be good if he just gives it a try.
Mm-hmm. I
Yeah,
think
like no one's kind of like born that way.
Oh yeah. The theme of like good and evil and morality is something that is overarching within Good Omens, and I think in like Neil Gaiman's works, where it's not something that you can definitively say is black and white because the world does not work that way. So
Yeah,
to adhere to these kind of like doctrines of like good and evil is ridiculous because
yeah,
that is not a possible thing for people to do, you know?
yeah, and that as and sort of that heaven and hell as the series goes on, especially they reveal themselves not always be like good and evil, but just kind of different kinds of authority. Like they're
Mm-hmm.
both kind of as messed up and corrupt as each other, really, but they just have sort of different ideas. It's like hell kind of knows they're evil while they're doing this sort of evil stuff, but heaven also does evil stuff, but they believe they're doing it for the right reasons.
Right.
So that's kind of the main difference between them is just sort of how they perceive themselves.
Yeah. I think one interesting thing that I noticed while watching the show is it seems like heaven and hell exist in the same building. Like hell is like in the
Yeah,
basement and then heaven is
yeah,
like at the top of the skyscraper. So
yeah,
they're
exactly.
like two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, because when they did, I'm trying to remember from season two, don't they like take the lift down
Mm-hmm.
to hell? Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, exactly, two sides of the same coin, literally
Right.
two floors of the same building.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
it's funny because like Crowley and Aziraphale are trying to stop the apocalypse because they believe like that's what they're supposed to do. And
yeah,
I'm watching the show and like I've never missed Sunday school before, you know. So I'm watching the show and I'm seeing Crowley and Aziraphale drive around trying to stop the apocalypse. In my head, I'm like, but wouldn't they want that? Like, wouldn't heaven want to win the war to show like they're the good guys and like they won?
yeah.
Like, and so when he figures that out, like Aziraphale's so shocked, and I'm like, my buddy, I don't know why you're surprised. Like,
I guess what happens when you're basically like in a cult for like thousands of years.
it's like, what, you want to destroy the world? But it's so nice here. It's like they don't care, babe.
Derek Jacobi, why?
Yes. I genuinely love that about like Aziraphale is that he's kind of naive almost. Like he is
Yeah,
so like good and like so kind, but it's clear that like living on Earth has kind of made him like so comfortable and complacent that he forgets to like you're supposed to be doing work here. Like you're supposed to be working. You
yeah,
can't just be jet setting all over the Earth. And then there's Crowley who is also not really doing what he's supposed to be doing on Earth. And he's
yeah,
just kind of like, I mean, just chilling, like for the most part.
yeah. So that, and they sort of meet in the middle because yeah, because Aziraphale's meant to be like doing all the sort of miracle stuff, and he kind of has fallen off doing that. And then Crowley's meant to be doing all the evil stuff, and they've fallen off doing that. And so they sort of kind of come and meet in the middle of just hanging out basically
Yeah.
for like hundreds of years.
Yeah. This will kind of like jump ahead, but I think season one, I didn't really understand like Crowley and Aziraphale's dynamic in that sense and how like they both seem like kind of complacent to me. I'm just like
Yeah,
I get that Crowley doesn't really want to like do bad things. He feels like he kind of has to because he's a demon, and he looks at
yeah,
Aziraphale as the angel, and the angel keeps trying to tell Crowley like, "Oh, find the goodness in you. Like, just look for the goodness in things and stuff like that." But in my head,
yeah,
I'm like, they're so different in a way. I don't understand it. And then season two, Crowley has this. There's this one episode where Crowley keeps saying like, "It's too late," you know, like he has
yeah,
this thing that he's saying, and it seems clear to me that like Crowley believes that the world is just so screwed over, and just like he kind of like
yeah,
surrenders himself to the nihilism of the world, that he feels like there is no other effort that I could put in that will change the end result. This is just the way that things are. And Aziraphale, in comparison, is someone who is like so kind, so compassionate, and so just attuned to being a good person that he cannot help but look at things in like this white area instead of like black and white.
mm,
He looks in like the white area, and like he does not see the nuance within the world. And Crowley gives into the nuance and feels like there's nothing else I can do. There's no other effort that I could put in that will change
yeah,
whatever it's going to be. It'll always be too late. It'll always be like the end of it, you know?
yeah. I think that's interesting because obviously Crowley has like been an angel, but like Aziraphale's never been a demon, so he's kind of already bailed out of heaven from that sort of
Mm-hmm.
very like, thinking already to be like, well, there's nothing I can do here, so I guess I'll just go be a demon. kind of thing, and
Right.
it's sort of that thinking that still carries him through. Whereas Aziraphale is very much like there's a right and a wrong way to do things.
Yeah, it's interesting because like Crowley, in the show they say that he like created gravity, so he's like something
Yeah,
of like heaven's engineer. And
yeah,
any engineer or like comp sci major I've met, they ask a lot of questions. You know, they just want to know
yeah,
things. That's like
yeah, exactly.
that's the basis of science. You ask questions. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
with Crowley, I remember it was a scene. I don't know if this is season 1 or season 2, but it was a scene with him and Aziraphale, and they're both angels at the time. And Crowley basically says like, "Oh, we'll ask a few questions. What can that do? You know, what harm could that bring?"
Oh, that's the very first scene of season two, right? Where they're like
Mm-hmm.
making the nebulas and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's like the opening of season two. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's really like what made him fall, but then also like what made him kind of like lose faith because he's like looking around in
Yeah.
hell and it's like I'm not supposed to be here. You know, like I get that you guys think I'm a devil, but like I did one bad thing that wasn't even a bad thing. So now I'm stuck here, and he has a
Yeah.
friend who's an angel who cannot see that there's something wrong with the way heaven works.
No,
Yeah.
exactly. It's also like so the fact that he's like the one who invented gravity and then he fell out of heaven, like
Mm-hmm. I think that makes
literally his
sense.
own knowledge.
It's funny because like him being an engineer and then his fascination with like Bentleys and like the way that things work on Earth. I love how that like translates to his character in like you know the human sense because like Aziraphale
Yeah.
has like his own faults I guess where he's been in heaven for so long he's been like removed from certain things like worldly things so when he's in like on Earth he sees what humans like which is like food and like fine dining and like art and he's like really interested in these
Yeah.
things because that's not there in heaven and Crowley is that he takes the interest that he has in heaven like engineering and stuff and he finds that interest in like cars and you know like
Yeah.
other things that he tinkers with.
Yeah. It's I mean, Aziraphale's become like kind of gluttonous almost
Yeah.
when he's been on it. There's obviously like, big sin. And
Mm-hmm.
then when he gets down, then he realizes that actually, like, having like some pleasures in life is not like inherently a bad thing. Again, it's that
Right.
idea of sort of Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett thinking about the stuff that's been inherently said to be this is a bad thing, this is a good thing. It's like actually having like a nice cake every so once in a while is not like a mortal sin. Like,
Right. Yeah. I
it's
think
like
that's what
enjoying
I
yourself.
yeah, enjoying yourself. And that's what I like about season 1 when we figure out like how Crowley does like he does like little crimes here and there. Aziraphale like lets him go like go do his thing and then like
Yeah.
Crowley and Aziraphale does like good things here and then Crowley's like not intervening and they have like this kind of back and forth with each other
Yeah.
where they just kind of like they have like this symbiotic relationship where at some
Yeah.
point that kind of comes to a head with the apocalypse and with them having to find like Adam and like
Yeah.
stopping it. Yeah.
Yeah. I was interested. One of the sort of like in the closing episode, I remember where they both kind of like beam Adam to that place where they're like talking to him, and you've literally got the shot of them like both like the angel and the devil on one side. And I think it's that it's about kind of rejecting the binary of just an angel or a devil, and in Adam kind of embodying like good and evil, like mixing together, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
I do like you know what I'm getting at, like that it's
Yeah.
sort of that kind of like you said, the symbiosis kind of
Yes.
represented in this kid.